All right. My guest today is Jason Lowe, the founder of Virtualtech Frontier. For those of you who don't know, Virtualtech Frontier is a virtualization and metaverse enablement company that is developing engagement-driven virtual events with virtual fairs, exhibitions, live streams, and hybrid events. Thank you very much for being here today, Jason.
Hey, nice to see you again, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast, man.
So take me back because I always love hearing the origin story. So, how did you become an entrepreneur in the first place? And how did you settle on entering the metaverse space and launching Virtual Tech Frontier?
I would like to believe I have like trained myself along the years to actually answer this story as short as possible. Because when we talk about like founding stories, sometimes it can go pretty long, right? I would love to tell people that my initial inspiration on becoming an entrepreneur actually came from Bill Gates itself. Not really a figure usually hear people use for inspiration these days, right?
Sure.
However, for my case, it was like that, and it happened way back when I was like probably 5 or 6 years old. Actually, I remember like heading back to a relative's house, and my father was reading a newspaper at that time. So I think when I was 5 or 6 years old, that's like, oh, that's 20 over years ago, I think. Still back in the like the early 2000s, late 90s sort of. Yeah, it was literally the late 90s at the time. And my dad was reading this newspaper in the morning, and suddenly he just made this remark, right? He said, "Oh, wow, do you know that the richest man in the world is Bill Gates?" Wow. And then I was like, "Oh, okay, well, who's Bill Gates? What does he do?" And my dad was just like, "Oh, yeah, I think it's computers and stuff. Like he's doing like computers, Microsoft. Ah, you're too young to know anyway." I was so that really got me curious, right? Onwards, like, oh, why is the richest man in the world someone who's like doing computers? That would be the last thing on a child's mind if you say that, oh, this guy is like the most well-to-do person in the world. And subsequently along the years, we were proven again and again that different people that came up from the tech industry, from IT, or anything related to technology would always turn up to be among the richest in the world and things like that. Not to say I'm motivated by money per se, but it's more of like it just sounded like, oh, that's like a really high target that I would like to like strive for, right? So when I started my degree, I decided, oh, okay, I'm gonna take computer science then. So I took computer science, and my majors was focused in in interaction technology actually, right? So it's multimedia computer science. So at that time we have been learning about AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, gamification. We've been learning how to build games through like some of the game engines out there. So that was the sort of course that I took in, because out of all of the computer science courses, that to me felt the least boring. Even though I look myself to be in the technology business, I still cannot foresee myself in the future sitting and deleting and replacing code every day kind of
Mhm.
level, right? So that was the day I just realized that, oh, probably I'm not gonna be like a CTO kind of person, even though I'm doing computer science.
Mhm.
And definitely I met some of my current co-founders during college days, and I saw one of my current co-founder, Eugene. He created this augmented reality app back in for his final year project all the way back in like 2012, 2013. And
Mhm.
when he showed me that, the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh, wow, this is my first time seeing AR. I've never seen something like this before. That was even before Pokemon Go,
Mhm.
right? And I just decided, okay, let's do a business out of it. So immediately after I graduate, I'm one of those guys that never went to corporate, never knew how the real world really looks like for someone. I'm just like, okay, let's do startup. Bam. A few things that actually aided me in my journey. Definitely want to give credit back to Magic. So Magic is used to be the Malaysia's like a tech organization. Then it became Meranti already. But back then, Magic actually held their first startup weekend. So it's Magic's first startup weekend. I decided to really by Seed Stars, right, Kevin? If you're familiar with it,
Mhm.
I decided to go figure what is that all about in 3 days. Entered a startup weekend, actually emerged as a champion company, me
Mhm.
and some of the gang at that time, because it's random, right? Startup
Yeah.
weekend. Yeah, we were like the first winners of Startup Weekend Malaysia, organized by Magic. And that really like kickstarted the journey. I did not pursue the idea at the time, because subsequently, as I mentioned, I found my co-founder. He
Mhm.
was doing this cool AR thing back in 2012. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So immediately after I graduated, we started doing this AR startup. My CTO from Sabah, because I'm Sabahan by the way, my
Mhm.
CTO all the way from Sabah joined us. Then it's just a three-person team for the first year or so. We were doing this augmented reality postcard souvenirs, right? Where we were thinking, oh, if you buy souvenirs, you get some 3D rendering thing come out of the souvenirs. It makes a more memorable experience to bring back home when you visit the country, something like that. So that was the first idea all the way back in 2013, when mobile phones to a certain extent weren't that advanced yet to really render and load all these 3D images and 3D files. And then it was definitely a challenge right there. But after a year or so of running that startup, a marketing agency in KL, or the really huge marketing agency in KL, saw augmented reality technology and AR, VR, this kind of gamification things. If you're not doing like a game per se, you will usually be used by corporate clients to really increase the engagements between the users and themselves, right? So you fall into like the marketing campaign category. So this marketing agency saw us and they kind of like did like a share swap kind of scenario. They're not really acquisition to say, but then then a whole team just came to KL, and that's how for the next 6 to 7 years we were in this marketing agency. I was like a minority shareholder, but we have been doing a lot of huge enterprise solutions actually, especially focused in marketing. And it comes to AR and VR physical events, they want like a very cool activation on the physical event. Boom, we put a VR booth there, an AR game, some touch screen panels. So really involved in like immersive technology for 6 to 7 years until the pandemic came. All right, one thing I would like to point out, right, Kevin, is that interestingly, when we were doing our first AR startup for the first year, it was really hard. So we were just like 24-year-old guys right out of college, and none of us have connections, none of us have experience. We were in Malacca. We were not even in KL. There's no VCs in Malacca. There was like nothing over there, no ecosystem. And then we had to keep traveling to KL just for the little bit of resource that we can get, right? It's like if someone give a talk, oh, let's all the way go to KL just to attend a talk for 1 hour, then we have to all the way drive back to Malacca for 2 hours and just, it was just
the
very
drive's
hard,
longer
right?
than the talk.
Right, definitely. The journey itself is like, wow, it's like just really tough. And that was just how underdeveloped certain support ecosystems had along like the country, right? About if you're talking about 10 years ago. And it was just really tough. And for a 24-year-old, you're like, yeah, this is tough. What those articles say is true. Entrepreneurship is very tough. You have so many things to grind. You're not even
Really
getting
hard.
paid. We're getting paid like 500 ringgit a month, I think, because we could only afford that at the time, right? It
Yeah.
looks cool, yeah, yada yada, but then the reality is not that great. So reality really hits at the time. Yeah, really hit us at the time, and I just decided, oh, when the marketing firm came, because they were a traditional business, right? So we were from like a tech startup and a traditional SME. He came and like, oh, let's do this together. And I was like, okay, like, let's just do this. I don't want my co-founders to only earn 500 ringgit for the foreseeable month down the road. We're not even sure what is fundraising. You know, so many things we don't know. So we just at that time I really decided, okay, let's stop this startup thing. I don't think it's meant for us. I have no idea what's going on. Traditional business seems to earn way more money than startups. You get proper salaries. You work with the big companies out there because this firm is already working with huge players like Microsoft itself, right? And I was saying, oh yeah, maybe I'll understand how Bill Gates earn money better if I do projects for Microsoft. So I decided to okay, fine, quit startup, go traditional business.
Yeah.
And that's cool, right? Steady. At its peak, that company was earning about 30 million a year. And I was like, wow, when we need my ringgit, right? I was like, wow, when we need my startup, we're going to earn like 30 ringgit a year. And they're doing it consistently. And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, startup is like for the, I always felt that it's for some chosen people in the world that's going to figure it out one day. Not me. I decided at 25 years old that's not me. I'm going to work normal, right? So we did a lot of really huge corporate projects at the time, like Microsoft, Intel, AMD was our client when they launched the Ryzen series, Asia. You know, we did regional global campaigns. And we were touch a lot end to end, and it was very exciting, right? Marketing events is always a very exciting part of the business. And then the pandemic hit. A lot of things happened in between. One thing led to another. Mismanagement, everything that can go wrong to a traditional company really kind of happened. And when the pandemic came, it just spearheaded certain death. And that was a huge blow to me at the time, Kevin, because I decided to like quit startup to join a traditional company because I wanted like stability and whatever, right? And next thing you know, they died also. Just circumstances when it's not right, no matter are you a startup or are you a tech company or are you a traditional whatever, you just be faced with forces that you just cannot control.
Stability is kind of
right?
a bit of an illusion,
Mismanagement happens everywhere, right? If you have little money, you know what to do with it, you go far. If you have a lot of money, you don't know what to do with it, you just die also. And
Yeah.
that is true no matter are you a tech company or are you like a traditional company with a restaurant and things like that. This is a joke, right? That a lot of my friends who is in F&B, when we talk about, oh, do you want to raise, do you want to invest in my company? 100,000 only. I can kickstart a small MVP project, POC, proof of concept thing. And they're like, oh no, tech startups, they don't work. Next thing you know, they spent 1 million in renovation for their restaurants and they think that's absolutely normal. And their return of investment is going to be 3, 4 years down the road, which we wouldn't even scale, right? So that's just
Yeah.
how I think I see like the landscape over here, right?
Yeah. And restaurant
Yeah.
business is notoriously hard as well. So it's not
Yeah,
like
it
the
is, right?
success rates are dramatically different,
Just dramatically
in
higher.
all
It's
honesty.
not either, right?
Um,
Yep. So after the company like closed down after 7 years. Oh, so there was I at like being 30 years old, like being lost. I'm like, oh my
mhm.
God, like what's going on? That didn't work, this didn't work. I
Yeah.
actually didn't want to do entrepreneurship ever anymore
Yeah.
during the pandemic. Literally, Kevin, that was just totally out of my mind. My parents are both teachers, by the way. They're government servants serving the Malaysian education system. And
Okay.
they have been telling me, they've been warning me. They've been saying, Jason, I look at you, you're, that's just not it, man. Like you
Yeah.
shouldn't have done all this. Look at all the sufferings and troubles and money that was lost.
Mm.
Like you should just go back and be a teacher, which was what they wanted for me in the first place. And I really considered that. I
Yeah.
started to take some certifications and things like that. But then the pandemic just kept continuing.
Mm.
And while I was on the path on figuring out how do I get involved in education for some reason, a lot of our ex-clients just suddenly came back to me and
Yeah.
my co-founder because we were still staying together. I stayed with my two co-founders, by the way, at the time. Um, Clients just came back and they were, hey, Jason, looks like the pandemic is going on. Can we, are there solutions out there that can be used to engage to our consumers and clients? Because if we want to do campaigns, it's like the brand do thousands of interactions at one point. Zoom just
Yeah.
doesn't cut it. You know, these kind of con calls just won't cut that sort of like interactions. And
Yep.
for some reason, Facebook, they've been trying a lot of things on the other social media platforms. It's not doing too well for them.
Yeah. With
So
like
they were like,
groups and
hey,
that.
Jason, yeah, right. So they're like, hey, Jason, can we just figure something out? So we just decided to do some crazy thing, I guess. My CTO, of Neil at the time, he just decided that, hey, let's just do a virtual world. And let's just let everyone go into the virtual world and figure out how we're gonna do like virtual events there. And I was like, okay, cool, let's just try to pitch to the client. So we just pitched to this client and they were like, oh yeah, okay, can let's do it. I love it. Fine. So we executed one. It was a link with the Penang state government. It was quite a big project. They were doing
Mm.
this Penang halal exhibition. They got all the local merchants in, like they were like 100 merchants,
Okay.
thousands of visitors came to the place, and then we were like, oh, okay, cool. Someone actually cares about something like this. And then we went to the next client and they went, oh yeah, let's do this. So then we went to the next
Mm.
client and said, oh yeah, let's do this. So then suddenly like we have this bunch of clients and this whole list of projects we had to fulfill. Like I remember when we started taking this on, it was October 2020. And
Okay.
from October 2020 to December 2020, within a short span of 2 to 3 months, I think we had over 400, over 1,000 in revenue. Just
Yeah.
like that, just from one random thing and one yeah, and then next thing you know, I was like, oh, okay. That was when I told my co-founders, okay, guys, I think we have like 400,000 in revenue coming in. I don't think all this money should be going into our bank account because we were like freelancing, right? At the time, we were just figuring
Mm.
out how do we freelance this thing out. And then we met another partner and we decided to start an official company to deal with all this because we
Okay.
just, experience wise, we know mismanagement of money is going to just bring you down very
Sure.
badly, right? So I was like, oh, guys, we need to redo this properly. Like, let's see how are we going to like do a lot of these things properly and things like that. Um, and because previously in the marketing agency and things like that, I wasn't in charge of like finance, I wasn't in charge of operations, I was really just in charge of tech. Like if they
Yeah.
have a really great proposal, like me and my team, we were just doing the technologies part of things. So there were a lot of things that wasn't within our control, and that mismanagement sometimes cause a lot of these kind of disruptions. So I was really determined to do it right this time. Um, Managed to find a partner. Next thing you know, when I was pitching to one of my clients, that runs an advertising agency, a media agency, we just felt that, oh, media agency and virtual interactions, so I think there's a connection there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I went and pitched to him. Next thing you know, he decided to become a co-founder right now of Virtualtech
Okay.
Frontier. So that's Kendrick. I think you connected to him on
Yeah.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like,
I'm
yeah,
connected
yeah,
with
yeah.
Kendrick. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so Kendrick came from a media agency background, and rather than becoming a client, he was like, let's do this together. Like I want in. Let's do this together.
Yeah,
Like this is
yeah.
a huge potential. And that time it was only virtual events, right? We were really talking about virtual events, virtual exhibitions, virtual conferences. So yeah, we then got angel invested by him and his company. They came
Hmm.
in. We became like a part of his media group, and we really started doing a lot of virtual events in 2021. So that
Okay.
was okay. That was actually pretty okay because the pandemic was still on all-time high,
Yeah, I was
more and
still
more
locked
solutions came
down,
in.
all of those things.
Yep,
Can't
yep, yep, yep.
travel, so
Correct, correct.
all of those restrictions were still in their height.
Was still there. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And we were doing actually pretty okay. Like we earned quite a huge bit of revenue during the
Mm.
time. We were even profitable because even though we were like doing a tech product, we were literally selling it like any normal solution. It's like a SaaS solution. You just sell, your margins are there. We were
Yeah,
literally profitable, right? During the pandemic. But a lot of people kept saying things like, "Oh, but what if the pandemic ends? Like, what's going to happen to this solution that seems to be doing really well in the pandemic and
sure,
things like
sure,
that?"
sure.
And yeah, so I was really brainstorming about, oh, so what's next? Is this really going to be bad? So we really need to forecast what's going on down the road, right? And that was when in October 2021, Mark Zuckerberg just decided to change Facebook to Meta. They did this whole Metaverse launch.
Yeah,
And I remember just waking up to it. Sorry, let me off my light now.
yeah.
I just remember waking up to it, and suddenly everyone's just like spamming my WhatsApp. Like,
Yeah,
oh, Jason, what is this? What is this? I want, like, my corporate clients are spamming me, my partners are spamming me,
yeah,
all like, oh, how do we get in the metaverse? What's this? This is so cool, so cool, so cool, blah, blah. And when I was like, oh, what's going on? And I was like looking at like the Meta video
yeah,
launch, and I was like, I don't think all this is real. Like this is like some promo video. But just
yeah.
because it came out from Meta, everyone thinks like, ooh, Metaverse future. So but that kind of like brought me thinking, is this the next step? Like, is this
Mm.
what this is going to go beyond virtual events only? And this is something that gonna long term be sustainable even like post pandemic and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So we started researching about it, started to talk to quite a number, really understanding virtual worlds. What are other virtual platforms out there that is doing things beyond the virtual events? What can you really do in a virtual space? So a lot of like research was went into it, and that was until I for a string of fortunate events with a
Hmm.
series of fortunate events, I managed to get to meet Kylie Ng of 500 Global.
Yep.
Kylie Ng has always been one of the most prolific investors within the region. Did a lot of really great stuff. In fact, a lot of my early, I told you about driving to KL just to watch a talk and go back, right? So most
Yeah,
of them
yeah.
were
The
Kylie
Malacca to
Ng
KL trip.
conferences and
Yeah.
talks. Yeah. Most of them were Kylie Ng speeches because not many people were also like giving talks about VCs and investments in Southeast Asia
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
time, 10 years
When
back.
500
So
came on the scene, it was really like the only like real VC within the
right,
Malaysia
yeah.
market.
Correct. It's very different, right? Because we have been talking to quite a number of investors for our virtual events and things like that. And the way, I mean, not to bring any negativity into the statements, it is always very different to hear like local VCs. And an example, when suddenly I met Kylie Ng, because it was crazy. My first meeting with Kylie Ng, I thought I was like prepared. To me, it felt a little bit like, wow, I'm finally meeting like wow, one of the best guys. And I was like pretty nervous, but I felt very ready at the time because I already had like 7 years of entrepreneurship under my belt.
Yeah.
Um, went through a lot of downfalls. I already met a lot of VCs, a lot of the local VCs that questioned me a lot of things that only local VCs will do, right? Or the very challenging financial questions that doesn't make sense in a seed company, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So so I
I've
was like,
seen
oh,
that happen. I always wonder why are you asking about working capital management when you need to figure out how are you going to get your first customers?
yeah, right. So I thought I was really ready for Kylie Ng. I had this FAQ beside me. I was so ready, right? I bring it on, man. I'm ready. And what he asked really shocked me, Kevin, because he was like, okay, Jason, I don't want to see your pitch. My first meeting, I'm not here to see your pitch. I don't want to really like look at it. I'm here to ask you a question. And then I'm like, oh wow, this sounds like a drama from some some place. Okay, fine, yeah, sure. Ask me a question. I'm ready. Bring it
Mm.
on, man. Just bring it on. I'm ready for that question. And his first question to me, right, Kevin, was, okay, Jason, tell me, how do you be a unicorn? And in fact, he was like, hey, I've already invested in, I have like 6 to 7 unicorns under my portfolio right now. So I think unicorns are becoming mainstream. How do you be a decacorn? Yeah, tell me about that. I think that's more exciting, Jason. How do you be a decacorn? And That took me away, Kevin. I was just freaking mind blown. I was like, what? Like, what? Like, never in my business plan or proposal or my pitch, you're gonna get like, how do you be a unicorn, do a decacorn? You want to know about deca?
Yeah,
And
bigger
Kylie Ng
vision.
said, depending how you answer me, we're gonna determine whether you're gonna have a next meeting with me or not. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna blow it, man.
No
I have no
pressure, no
freaking
pressure.
no one ever talked about it. In fact, no local VCs believe in that. Like, trust me when I say that. Like, a
Yeah,
lot of them just don't think that is a great strategy because they
yeah,
think that there are a lot of consequences. Each path you take, there are consequences, there are pros and cons. But for 500 and Kylie himself, he really believed in it, right? And I was just honest with him, like, Kevin. I didn't try to bullshit my way out of it. I didn't try to beat around the bush and pretend I know how I'm gonna do it. I just told him, sorry, I do not know the answer. I've never thought about it. I'm not too sure even do I want to even think about it. And because of that, I'm sorry. So that was it. I thought I blew it. I have no next meeting. And thank you very much, right?
mm,
And and that was when he told me, well, Jason, I mean, I do not expect real answers, right? But I want to expect to see your thought process behind it. Like, the goal here is not whether are you going to be a unicorn at the end of the day. The goal here is, do you have that aggressive growth mindset of a founder that I'm looking for?
yeah.
And then he said, you still don't know, right? I said, I don't know. And next thing you know what Kylie Ng did to me, Kevin? He shared screen and he Google image. He pulled out this Google image and he typed how to be a unicorn. And then there was this charts about animals that came out. And it's like, are you selling like $1 million to 100 whales? Or are you selling like a
Mm,
dollar to 100 million ants to get to 100 million in
yeah,
revenue, annual revenue, right? So it was the animal chart, right? Like, where are you? What is your solution? What is your
yep.
product? So it was that chart alone. It really like dive deep into so many things, like your product, your target audience, your market size, your direction, and how fast are you. The goal here to be like a unicorn, decacorn, whatever, is how fast can you also reach there. Sure, anyone can say they will be unicorn 30 years later. And does that even still make sense as a startup becoming a unicorn? No, you're just like a normal company that made it big and exit 30 years. So the question even is, can you even do that fast? What is your
Mm,
strategy to do that fast? Is it you need money to grow resources? Do you even know how to grow your resources? Do you even know how to do distribution? So there was just so many, it was such an impactful picture that
yeah.
one picture alone makes you think like 1,000 questions about your company, and you suddenly start to see all these gaps and loopholes that you do not have, right? And yeah, he just showed me the picture. I was like, okay, you go figure this out. We talk next time. Bye. Boom. That's it. That was it. That was my first meeting with him. It's
Yeah.
crazy, man. Yeah. So subsequently had more meetings, right? And then yeah, I started to give different answers. Like, he could really see the mindset shift because we had no actual product yet that can like tell people, oh, this is how we're gonna be unicorn, right? But subsequently, yeah, I mean, next thing you know, everything went well. He invested in us, and that started our journey in like the metaverse actually, right? So we were
Okay.
figuring out virtual events, pandemic ending, maybe yes, maybe no. We're still making some money in it, but it's definitely not an idea to make me a unicorn. Like, I already know that, right? Like, it's fine as a business. It's just not a business that you can grow big fast, right?
Yeah.
So that was when we really looked into the metaverse, and then we found a lot of these issues and gaps with the metaverse. I think you kind of saw our presentation deck a couple of months ago, right? So we're trying
Hmm.
to solve like the metaverse space right now by enabling a lot of people to own the metaverse very easily, and that's how from that direction we moved towards like building our current platform called Mito World. So Mito World itself was just like beta launch a month ago, I guess, during
Okay.
Chinese New Year. So we had to wait Chinese New Year to end, and only we
Yeah.
start to like get partners and things like that. Yeah. So
Sure.
that's our journey so far, lah. Right. Oh, sorry, it took a little bit too long, but that was how it started all the way to like where I am right now, working with partners and various investors in the ecosystem
Yeah.
to really try and change the space within the metaverse through this whole thing. Sometimes it's not that straightforward, right, Kevin? It's not like one day you wake up, you read the news, right? Someone just wake up and like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I know what I'm gonna do. And next
Mm.
thing you know, oh, history. But a lot, I think, I would like to believe a lot of founders actually go through a lot of like different paths to get to where they are today, even though it's just like the first year in the first company, right?
Yeah, there's definitely no one size fits all. And what I find interesting is like when you date back to like going straight into being an entrepreneur and talking about not having the contact network and all of that, making the decision to pair up with the marketing firm. Okay, so that didn't work out, but it got you those connections to where all of a sudden people start contacting you and it kind of pulls you in the direction
Mm,
of launching a company again when you weren't really thinking about entrepreneurship. So it's a bit of like, coincidence meets preparation. And that kind of like
Yep.
triggered that, and then that kind of rolls over into getting 500 on board, and that kind of rolls over and like chain of events that if you don't take the action, then they can just kind of pass by. It's kind of interesting to hear how that played out. I am quite
Yep.
curious if we can kind of like dig into the aspect of this new launch that you launched in over Chinese New Year. And if you can talk about maybe the transition of the product from like the pandemic era when everyone's on lockdown, everything needs to go virtual because there's no other option, and then looking at the post-pandemic era and the evolution that you've taken because of that.
Yep. It was actually a really hard transition because during the pandemic and we were doing a lot of these kind of like projects. And when we were doing all these projects, we were doing in a very agency model also. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, even though it was a tech product, but the way we were selling and growing it was still very agency focused.
Yeah.
So we were dealing with a lot of huge corporate clients, but and we thought we were okay. I think we were thought that, that's great, right? And then our revenue was growing. We did actually really well last year. Like growth year on year ever since 2020 until now has been like 4x, 5, 6x year on year
Mm-hmm.
growth kind of situation, right? And but when we show some of the VCs that we were pitching the solution to, they were just like, oh, Jason, all this doesn't count. Like all these are like manual, they call it manual work, right?
Sure.
And this does not show your ability to scale as a startup because it still involves a lot of manual manpower to do
Yep.
quite a number of things, even though it's a technology product, but it's not a fast growth sort of model.
Yep.
And he said if you continue down this path of like agency servicing, he said I don't think any VCs are going to want to invest because that's just not the game over here, right?
Yeah, there's a limit to
So we
scale
have
when you
been
require a lot of headcount to do these sort of things.
to
Yeah.
make certain growths, right?
Yeah.
So we were trying to like figure out what's gonna happen next and things like that. And the metaverse has still been ongoing of a huge trend during those moments because a lot of people are just still very new. You get a lot of like buy-in from what we call early innovative companies per se.
Mm-hmm.
Companies with innovation arms, companies that just want to be the first of everything, and they just want to be in the space yet, be
Sure.
beyond like, oh, figuring how do I get real ROI out of this whole
Mm.
thing. So there was still a lot of things like that. And I realized in most of the time, a lot of the talks that I go to, so I go and speak a lot about the metaverse, what is it, how do companies benefit from it, and so on. And I'll always get a lot of requests during those sessions from actually smaller companies, SMEs, SMBs, who's that? How do I get on? But the usual charges that we charge to corporate clients are definitely not money that is palatable to the smaller companies. And that was where I realized, oh, there's this huge gap over here that a lot of people want it, but they cannot afford it because of the amount of customizations or like metaverses very linked to crypto, right?
Yeah.
During the boom of it, you like buying lands, empty lands, then you have dead lands or whatever going. And a lot of companies also cannot like use crypto to buy all these weird empty lands and things like
Yeah.
that. So I do see a lot of these kind of gaps going on. And then it was because of all these gaps, with me being really in touch with a lot of the audiences out there, we finally found a way to like, okay, we need a platform that will enable the metaverses to be deployed very easily for everyone. And we really took a lot of cues from like Wix.com. Do you know Wix.com?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Wix.com is like
Making
a
website
website
building
builder.
easy. Yeah.
Anyone can build a website, right?
Yeah.
Canva, anyone can be a graphic designer, no code,
Yeah.
fast deployment solution, and really cheap, right? It's way cheaper than you pay an agency
Yeah.
and to do it, right? And so we decided that, oh, can we actually do that for virtual worlds, for the
Uh-huh.
metaverse?
Yeah.
Metaverse world building tool and things like that. And we were a lot of research went into it. Like that's when again I see the benefits of like funding.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, Kevin, I'm not gonna keep you when there are so many entrepreneurs that I talk to, and I was involved in quite a number of entrepreneur circles and things like that.
Sure.
They were like, "What? You took your investors' money to do R&D? Like you're burning their money? Like that's called pure burn, right? Because you're
Mm.
trying to figure out, you're trying to build a product, and it's
Sure.
not something that a CTO and two guys is going to figure out something that's going to change the world because really that's just not reality most of the time. And a lot of like other VCs will think, yeah, I'm just going to give you some money to afford two guys. You two guys go figure it out, and and in reality, if you're really trying to be a fast growth unicorn company, a lot of these kind of stories don't make sense unless you're some genius from MIT or something who figured
Mm.
something out during his studies, right? But in reality, when you're out there, you're talking to all these people, you're trying to do something that they're willing to pay money for. There's a lot of process that will have to go through in between. And a lot of these companies that I meet just cannot stomach the fact that, wow, what's all this burn going on, like. And but to a certain extent, those are what I believe to be necessary steps. And that's when you start to raise money from partners and VCs who understand the vision, who understands what you're trying to do, and then they're like, okay, yeah, this seems like the plan to move forward in the metaverse space and things like that. Especially when we are really outfunded by our current competitors also. Like, you just, at that period, right, any metaverse company you see that got funding raised like 10 million seed money, dollars, I'm not even talking about ringgit, man, like $10 million seed money. And then when we look at it, and then that's when again people be skeptical, like, oh, you're not even raising 10, like you're gonna get crushed by them. Yeah. So you get all this negativity, but we're like, no, local advantage. So we have to figure out a lot of strategies, that local advantage, we're gonna go fast. We have a lot of corporate partners in our belt already. So it's like really tapping into the distribution network that we already have. So a lot of these kind of strategies are the things that we pull through. And throughout the months, we actually built like a no-code metaverse platform. Like weeks, we really managed to do it. After a span of, I think, 4 months, we started this project in October. And then we managed to launch this, I think, during Chinese New Year a couple of weeks back. And this is currently still in our beta testing phase, actually, right? So we're giving like closed invited audiences to use. It's live anyway. Like anyone out there, if you're going to try to figure out if you can do a metaverse yourself, feel free to visit metover.io. You can try it out right now, but it's not like openly marketed yet. We're actually doing our launch only on the 14th of March. Which is in 2 weeks' time. So very busy preparing for the media launch for the event. Hey, I'm gonna invite you there, by the way, Kevin, if you have time on the 14th of March. I'll send you an official invitation. But from Chinese New Year until now, for the short span of 2 to 3 weeks, within our partners and people that just somehow found out about us with word of mouth, right? I think we've already had 300 over metaverses being created on the platform itself, right? And I see a wide array of companies, individuals, influencers, creative studios, event agencies. Like, it was this huge wide range of people that is using our platform to do various different worlds, because they have this, even though pandemic has ended and things like that, but you still find a lot of people who needs these kind of spaces to connect with people beyond your local location, which is like KL, for example, right?
Sure.
And through the platform, we were able to really, and with this platform, right, Kevin, I realized I was able to start to leverage a lot of things that I could not before, as compared to like a very manual product company. Like one of the bigger partnerships that I'm talking with, they're one of the biggest cloud providers in the region. Haven't sealed the deal yet, so I'm not going to mention the name, but we're working towards with one of the largest cloud providers in Asia to do like a metaverse integration to the platform. And this is only possible because we have a working platform that can be integrated. If it's just a custom solution, again, it just doesn't work that way, right? You cannot
Malaysian
mass
company?
distribute the solution. No, they're not a Malay. I don't think there's any really big Malaysian cloud providers. No, they're not. Yeah, they're an international cloud company, and they're going big in Web3 and the Metaverse and NFTs and whatever. And we were the only Metaverse platform out there available in the region. So talking it away. So because of the development for the platform, a lot of the things that I was able to negotiate and leverage on certain partnerships have become way bigger. In fact, a lot of the metaverse prototypes that people are using to churn proof of like last time, you want a metaverse proof of concept, it's gonna take you like, quote, a 2-week project. It's gonna take 2 to 3 weeks.
Because
you
you gotta
50K.
do it from scratch. Yeah. The
Yeah.
barrier
We
is
recently
much higher. Yeah.
Yep. I think nowadays we're doing proof of concepts in 1 week. We can do like 10. Like, it dramatically reduces the time. And our metaverses is as cheap as $1,000 per metaverse, right? So a lot of people don't mind paying it. Like, you suddenly see this huge change of economics of scale between how people perceive the metaverse right now, right? So quite a lot of things are like happening, and it's just like a couple of weeks only. Like within these few weeks only, I've already been seeing all these kind of very interesting things, right?
So that's like the entryway. So you can get in for $1,000, so you can kind of like test your water. You're interested in it, but you're not ready to fully commit, but you can kind of put your toe in the water. You can put something together. And then is it kind of like a land and expand strategy from there? So if I am, a decent sized corporate, maybe, testing it out, get a POC, low cost, but then, hey, I like this, let's scale it up. So I come back to you and it's start extending the program.
To a certain extent, I think yes. So we have a lot of like, so Wix itself, we have templates, right?
Sure.
And depending on what template you choose, so if you want to just go easy on it, you just put it a few thing MVP, right? So a lot of people
Yeah.
are using Wix, they actually do MVPs also, and they're
Yeah.
gonna test to see whether, oh, is the idea, people are gonna click, they look at the user journey and everything like that. And if you're more serious into Wix, actually what's gonna happen is that you're just gonna probably beef up the website even more,
Yeah.
but you'll probably then start to spend marketing dollars on it, right?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, let me extend to 10 more websites. Like, it doesn't work that way. So it's
Mm.
a bit similar to the metaverse. So, or not to say the metaverse, it's a bit similar with our platform in Mito World, where a client that decides they're going to go more serious on it, they're going to start to put effort in making the space more beautiful, for example. And they
Mm-hmm.
start to implement more functions, meaning they'll get an official agency. So we have a lot of agency partners that's helping the clients to build on our platform right now. We've been doing a lot of onboarding with all these kind of partners. And then all these clients will then ask them to, oh, okay, let's do more custom designs, custom videos, custom 3D files to be put into the website. And then
Mm-hmm.
they will go serious when they're going to start to spend marketing dollars on it, when you start to drive traffic for people into their metaverse to do all these kind of like activities and interactions and things
Yeah.
like that, right? So that will be the part on how they want to take it more seriously, rather than like, oh, do I like buy 10 more metaverses and things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So let's switch to like a little bit more forward looking. So, you launched the new product, you're entering a new space, only a couple weeks since it's been out in the market, but some good traction already. When you look forward and maybe let's tie it back to the conversation that you had with Kylie, when you're talking about getting to decacorn status, or like maybe wiping that off the mind, but like getting to big tech company, becoming like one of the big names. What's next? What should we expect to see from you coming up?
This is a super challenging question, Kevin, because as much as I do try to like enforce that mindset into my day-to-day strategic
Mm,
decision making and things like that, right? I have been trying to figure it out also. And what I mean by figuring out is that I've been like, I mentioned earlier on, I've been involved in a lot of like entrepreneur groups, trying to figure out what are the bigger companies that have been doing to get to
yeah.
where they are today. And it's very interesting to see a lot of them will get to a certain point and they'll get stuck.
Mm,
And then suddenly the growth will plateau, no matter how much they burn and throw in marketing and advertising, they just don't grow anymore. So those are pretty scary stories that I hear on like,
mm,
oh, you guys did so well, and next thing you know, you're stuck, and then they start to tell about all the things that they did that didn't work. And then I also like, I travel to Singapore, I travel to multiple countries, I talk to different founders from different countries to hear the perspective of different regions, podcasts. Like I really try and swarm as much information into me
yeah.
as possible in terms of like going to that direction. And the answer I got, right, Kevin, is there's no answer. There's
No.
no like one answer. It's like everyone the most solid advice that I get, there's a, I really wanted to attend your session in FI with like
Mm,
Eric, because Eric's company is also a portfolio company of 500, right? And
yeah.
Kylie Ng apparently challenged Eric the same thing.
Same.
Oh, do you want
Same.
to be a unicorn, right? Like
Yeah.
I think went through a similar treatment. I haven't watched that yet, so I'm gonna like go check that out. I wanted to attend the event, but I had another meeting at the day because it was about growth and expansion, right? So I really
Yeah.
wanted to check that out. But from the other sources of information that I've gotten, there's no straightforward answer. Everyone had a specific secret sauce strategy that they found out that worked for them. But the journey to find that, okay, in Andrew Chan's words, he's a
Mm,
partner of A16Z. He
yeah.
recently did this book called The Cold Start
Cold
Problem, where he
start.
really
Yeah.
talked about network effects,
Yeah.
atomic networks, distribution, and every company has their own distribution network one, like their network effect. Like,
Yeah.
and it's your job and your team to figure out what that network is
Mm,
through product market fit, through talking to people. Like everything again comes into play, right? You need to have the correct product that would resonate to the correct amount of audiences. That will start the word of mouth effect. That's gonna blah, 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 blah. And then it's like the key word here, the key point here, I think that a lot of companies and startups don't take in mind is replicable strategies. Like
yes.
the network effect must be something you know how to replicate in another region. And if
Mm,
it's not something replicable, it's something very manual and very forced. You shove it into people's throats for signups or things like that. That you're just not gonna get that, right?
yeah.
So for me right now, core focus with the company is really trying to figure out not only our network effect strategy right now, but a replicable and like a sustainable strategy that we can actually use to grow the company towards. I mean, I don't know how far it's gonna go, but definitely I think this would be the right path moving forward. By growing the company down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll definitely be some experimentation, and it's
Yes.
it's
Yes.
it's it's one of
Try
those
and
things like
errors.
day zero or whatever, however you want to end up kind of phrasing it. I always love going back to like Bezos quotes and things like that as well when it comes to like if you want to move the needle and move the company forward, you have to take risks that are commensurate with the size that you're at. So you constantly need to kind of accelerate and push things forward. Let me wrap up here. We've covered a lot of ground. Let me wrap up here with my closing questions, the questions that I ask everyone. And so the first question is, what is a tech tool that you just cannot live without?
Um, my calendar tool on like Teams. I've recently just like inputted Calendly into my time management because I'm
Yeah.
personally there's just so many meetings and then oh my
Yeah.
God, like when you go to a certain stage you just can't handle it anymore.
I
Yeah,
love
so
Calendly, to be honest with you.
I
Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
you
right.
booked this session on using a Calendly
On
link.
Calendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So calendar tools, like anything that helps me improve my time management is I cannot live without that, man. Like that's my
Yeah.
lifeline. Like and I cannot operate properly
Yeah.
without them. So yeah, definitely time management tools. Yep, definitely. Yep.
Okay, very cool. And so last question here is if you were to talk to another founder that's just getting started out, say back in your Malacca days, let's call it, what
Mm.
would be the biggest piece of advice that you could offer?
Oof. There's just a lot of like things that I find it to be very important. But if I want to resonate and advice that is more like closely to my belief, right? I think it's definitely the keep trying attitude. Sounds super cliche, like you just don't give up, you just got to try to figure something out. But so the issue is that as I told you, I like my previous agency went down and things like that. It was a period of very tough moments as a founder,
Mhm.
and growing a strong support system, right? You're growing a strong support network and system that will help you, be it from families or you get official counseling from like people that helps you to strengthen your mental health, performance coaching. I think a lot of these kind of efforts is really needed to grow as a founder. Only you
Yeah.
can go with the never give up attitude. Because if you just from day one you go, never give up, never, you're gonna get burnout. You're gonna
Yeah.
start to not have hope. You're gonna burn and things like that. So what really got me through during very, very difficult times is a strong support system.
Mm.
And I actually officially get like a professional help from counselors and performance coaches actually to really come in and drive my mindset, realign the way I think at certain things. And I'll be very surprised to find out many times that you think you're thinking straight, but they'll be able to find out how you're actually stuck in a box right now and you're stuck
Yeah.
in a bubble thinking things in the rate. So I think really getting professional help in terms of like enabling you to think and make decisions and work better either from counseling, mental health counseling, or like performance coaching, and a strong support system to share your burden with. I think that would be one of the things that I would love to see from founders getting into their whole ecosystem of growth. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice because building a startup is incredibly hard. It is a roller coaster and it is not easy. So you really need to be able to have some sort of support structures to keep your mental focus, to keep you moving forward, and just to kind of be able to unload from time to time. If you're talking to like a
Yep.
mental health coach or talking to somebody and with other entrepreneurs or whoever the support network is, it's a matter of like unburdening maybe and refreshing your
Yep.
batteries.
Yep. Because if you in burnout mode, that's when you're gonna start to give up in a lot of things. And that was it, right? That it can be like that one burnout moment, there'll be the death of your startup, just like that. It's just
Yeah.
because you have no one to share it about. Because like they say, like entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. It's because a lot of founders just don't talk too much about the issues, read too much media on successes of other people, and then suddenly you just beat yourself up by yourself. It's a very complicated like thing, and it's
Yeah.
pretty sad to see. Yeah. So these are some of the things that I usually would advocate to peers within my network. Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think every city, every startup community every startup hub needs to have more community as well in order to help drive it because it also raises the bar, the shared knowledge, etc.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
Very cool. Jason, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you being here with me and sharing the story of Virtualtech Frontier.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, thanks again for having me, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Fantastic. All right, that wraps it up for another fantastic episode of the Sea of Startups. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Go onto iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It's the best way for us to get discovered and to have these startup stories reach a broader audience. If you have any suggestions or would like to get in touch, you can email me at kevin@indelible.vc. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Brocklin from Indelible Ventures, and this is the Sea of Startups.